Hi, welcome to the Rob and Bird podcast. I'm Rob.
And I'm Bird. We're here to bring hope and motivation to those in the struggle. We're in it too. We cannot afford to give up.
We're basically cheerleaders. The road to success will be hard, but we want you to know you're not alone.
All right, well, let's get to it, Rob. What do we have diving into today's episode?
I think it's hard to work through failures. When people put their time and effort into whatever they're working on, they want to know that they're going to be rewarded. But that's not always the case. In fact, quite often, you're not rewarded, at least not instantly. And it's those moments when you should be getting those rewards. That determines whether you're successful or not. What matters is your perseverance through those perceived failures. Sometimes sometimes you actually should give up. But there are other times in which the first time's a failure. So you have to try a second time, and then a third, and a fourth. And maybe, just maybe perhaps, you will succeed. Persistence takes time and dedication.
Yeah, definitely does. And also focus, a strong sense of focus and belief within oneself to really kick themselves through the hard times, and especially when no one is really there for you. And there are times where your persistence will be tested when you're all alone and it may even feel like you're all alone and you actually have people that are thinking of you and believing that you could do something that you've been striving for when none have said anything. And sometimes everyone will have great days where their persistence and their focus is on spot, like just on point to where it needs to be to do their best work. And then there's going to be days where it's just nothing is working out and your focus is off. Your your finger is mispositioned. Your foot is in the wrong place. Your mind is somewhere else. There's going to be distractive moments, but in those times when everyone's say looking at you and it's one of those moments where they're all laughing at you kind of scene or whatever it is, that's where I think is where our persistence gets tested and we start to realize if this is all worth it, and if should we really, can we go get past those moments and see that as just a moment in time, because they're not everything. If anything, when you have enough of that persistence in you to keep going and keep striving, you'll look back at those failures and in those moments go, I'm glad I was able to see past it even when I felt I couldn't. And no one said anything in regards to me having just a moment of failure.
I mean, how long does it take to learn a skill? It takes time and it takes effort. You're going to have successes and you're going to have failures. I think that that's why classrooms are so important, is because it's an area where you are allowed to fail. And take advantage of those moments where you do fail. But recognize that life is its own classroom, because you go out there, you're going to try things, and sometimes you're going to be successful, and sometimes you're going to fail, and it's all about trying to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. If anything, I know Rob, you and I, man, like we've mentioned it multiple times, like how we were in school, how we were tested by our professors, like in perspective, anatomy, and then be told, yeah, this is not working. You got to keep doing this, doing it right, and they'll correct you. And I don't know about you, but it's like I remember seeing students just walking out kind of like in tears when they got a harsh criticism, but it was because they were just not at their best and they felt like they've been really failing.
I mean, I've had that myself. I remember coming in and I had a teacher look at my work and straight up tell me, "You're not trying." And it was hurtful, but it was he was trying to make sure that I was going to be on point. And in that moment, it was it took me probably a minute or two, But in that moment, I had dedicated myself. I did fail, and I'm gonna work hard to make sure I get my work done. And then for a class of what was it, 100 people, I handed in my work in like eighth because I looked at what I needed to do. I made a plan on how to do it, and I got through it with a lot of help. But it was because I stuck with it, and there were people that didn't stick it out, that decided they were going to go off and enjoy themselves and do whatever they want to do. It really is immaterial, but they decided other things were more important than what they wanted, and some of them didn't do as well as they wanted. Other people actually did fail, but I succeeded, but I failed first.
Yeah. And it's important, like, even in those failures, even if, because I do remember, like, yeah, in our school it was some students, it was, they had whatever it was they were doing, what's going on, and then they were rushing in the end. And I like, I remember seeing you as one of the several students who was just focused on trying to get their film submitted for their thesis, for example, and I as well. And it was such a struggle, I'd say, for me, because I was basically doing 2 years in 1 year, um, on my end, because I couldn't afford to do another year on top, and barely got my film in. I think I got mine done like after you as well. And
You said you were 11th or something?
yeah, 11th. It was like I got it in, and he's like, "Yep, got it in on time." And I remember other students who got it done way before. I was surprised, and I was like, "Well, great for them, because that's good, because they're not in the line of like, hey, deadline's coming up, like, you got time to submit it, or else you're in trouble." And a lot of people stressing out. I mean, I was stressing out, as I remember telling you before, because of being kicked out of the school roster for not being able to make payments at the time. And but I still worked on my thesis. I still kept going, and it got kind of distracting in that stress, but still got it in. Barely done, as you remember too. Uh, but like, it's good that you went through that moment of failure, dude, because it's like, even I have had things, pockets of failure in my past, as an artist, where it was
It
like,
was heartbreaking
it
to
is,
hear those words. You're not trying hard enough.
and you're wondering what the heck, like, I am, but at the same time you're like,
But that's actually why I chose my thesis advisor, because he called me out on it, and I agreed with him. That was a conclusion, and I decided I'm gonna redouble my efforts. I'm going to do the work that I failed to do.
yeah, there were, what was it, there are professors there, I'm glad that I got to be as well, I'm sure you as well, that put on that standard on us, like, to say, look, if you're gonna want to get in this field, you're gonna have to be able to hold that sword and shield and run with it. You can't, that kind of feeling. I guess in our case, hold the pencil and draw nonstop, and make sure you get your drawing skills up there. But with that said, for me, it was the internships, and I think I told you before, like, how I didn't get into some studios, even though, like, I was accepted, but for some reason I had to have money for credit, and that was denied to be able to take the internships, because the companies themselves needed to have the approval from the school and department. But therefore, I remember it hurt pretty bad, and I was like in tears in the bathroom stall, just exhausted of not sleeping for almost 2 days, trying to figure out how to get money to Even though I had a job, like part-time job and all that, I just could not make enough to pay that credit fee. Uh, and in the end, I still, after graduating that school and all, I still went out and uh, kept applying for jobs and got into Nickelodeon at some point. And I remember I entered at Algoblick Studios as well, and worked for several other studios over time. Um, but that was because I was nonstop persistent. I was mostly on my own, but there were still people that I reached out and gave a good word for me, and to give them a, hey, give this guy a shot. He really, really wants to be there, and it helped out. And even till this day, I mean, I'm still working within the creative field, not exactly in animation, but I do animation freelancing still, but I also do other work creatively as well. But it's really, really like, yeah, having that thick skin and persistence. Um, it's you got to be that person that just doesn't stop. You got a goal and you got plans, and you make sure that you're realistic with them, that you're not just pushing annoyingly so.
I think the lesson here is you're going to fail, and you're probably going to fail a lot. And it's going to take some time, but eventually those failures are going to amount to victory at some point. Or at least, I certainly hope so.
Yeah, you have to have belief, because a lot of the things that we do in this world are based on the belief that we can do it, and we go for it. And it's like the guys who invented the airplane, like they were jumping on hills with wings, and now we can actually fly in different countries.
How many
You know,
times did they crash?
I'm sure so many that they lost count probably. And then we have rockets to go out in space. Like, who would have thought sending a human being past the Earth's atmosphere into the moon? We tend to forget how incredible these feats are, and how much like human power and belief for these things to exist and happen. Obviously there's calculations and studies and testing nonstop, but in the end they succeeded in having this done and becoming a reality. Even ourselves as human beings, as we are here talking, trading and exchanging, what's the same thing, ideas. Those who want to progress for I hope as many people do, for the good, the greater good for each other. That is in itself a miracle in a persistence manner as well, if that makes sense. I mean, you and I right now, we're working on our own projects, right, Rob? You're writing on your book that's in progress right now, and I'm working on my short film. So it's like, that takes belief, that takes persistence, and you're gonna see it through.
Yeah. Um, I can't tell you how many times I stopped and started it. The project was long before I entered college, and long after I exited college, gone through the workplace. And now I'm back here, and I'm actually a lot further than I ever was. After starting all over again, trying to make it a cohesive narrative. But maybe you won't be the right brother, but the right brothers. But how many times did the Wright brothers try? And how many Wright brothers were there that never tried? You don't know. That's the thing. You might, if you try, you might fail. But if you never try, you will never succeed.
Yeah, you'll be stuck there, and it doesn't matter. Really, doesn't matter much what age you started, or it. Some people tend to think you got to start early all the time. And granted, that can depend, like if it's sports or something. But there are even times like I should remember this person's name, but there was a ballerina who they didn't want to consider her because she was a little older, and she actually became one of the top ballerinas in her, in that field. She was one of the best and got famous. She got noticed in the media outlets and all that, and proved that whole system wrong because she was persistent. She wanted to see herself become this ballerina, this role. Um, there are many examples out there, but if you look for it, great for inspiration. That's good. But what's also important is to become the very source of persistence in what you want to be. Um, you can do it. It's just you gotta look at the factors, look at what needs to be done for you to get started, and set a goal. Um, if that makes sense, and don't get so caught up. I wanted to say on the side, comparing yourself to what's out there right now. There's always something great out there and incredible in the field you're getting into, and you're like, I can't even do that. Well, there's something you have to be able to figure out you can do to give you an edge. You don't need to be the best.
I mean, like, I don't know the ballerina, but here are some names that you almost certainly would have known. Elvis Presley took several tries before he caught his break. When he got the first gig where he earned money, and he came back to his job, his manager said, "You're never going to make it." J.K. Rowling owes her success to her failures. She's had many difficulties throughout her life, and she kept persisting, and she wrote one of the most well-known franchises of today. And then there's Robert Downey Jr., who's a very high-profile actor. He had a long history of substance abuse, and he was almost about to quit. And then he got a job with Marvel. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Oh, and to mention, even Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's like, he had his because of his accent. He said in his speech, I'm sure it's out there on YouTube, that he would not be able to get lead roles, and then when he got in Conan, um, there were directors and others that looked at that and just went, if like Conan wouldn't be Conan without Arnold. And then afterwards he does Terminator, the famous saying that I'll be back, and all these roles. And I did see like even a short promo where Arnold was saying about his history, how he was compared to his brother, like he was kind of like okay, good luck, keep trying, where his brother was exceeding. So this guy, he pushed himself, as many others, of course, and none of these people are perfect. They're not always, uh, like you don't know what they have had to gone through to be where they are.
Who's Arnold's brother, anyway?
I don't know, but that's the thing. It's like I know Arnold, like because I've seen him in films for a long time, growing up. But many people have done such tremendous and wonderful things, and I'm sure because they either had a vision or a belief, and they kept persistent to that. They focused on that, and almost like nothing else.
I think that people often focus on the success a lot more than they do on the journey. And the journey is the thing that leads to your success. I mean, look at a lot of films that really focus on the journey. People talk
Yeah.
about Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Luke, people think of Luke as a great hero, but any fan of Star Wars is going to tell you Luke failed in every single movie he was in.
How dare you? Luke is perfect in every way. I'm kidding. He did.
I mean, look at the first movie. He gets knocked out by Tusken Raiders. He he almost screwed up the plan on the Death Star, and he almost died to Darth Vader. And then you look, just to be quick and brief about it, Empire Strikes Back, he gets his arm cut off. And then Return of the Jedi, he fumbles the plan in the beginning and has to improvise. And he almost kills his father, the person he's trying to save.
Yeah.
And he nearly dies in there too.
Yeah. And he could have based on like how the approach he took. But even I was gonna mention too, that it reminds me as you're talking about Star Wars, the one scene that I thought was so impactful, because I think many can relate to these moments of failure, is you remember that scene in Dagobah, when he sees his ship sinking, his
Oh right, yeah,
right,
the X-wing.
so
the X-wing is sinking into the swamp.
And he immediately tries to use the Force, and he's trying, and he fails, and he goes, "It's too big, I can't." That's, I mean, not, no pun intended.
Try not, do not. There
but,
is no try.
Right. He says that, but the one thing was that I did like was that he says, "I can't." He sees Yoda lift the ship out of the water. And he goes, "I can't believe it." He's like, "Well, that's why you fail." Because he couldn't believe it himself. Kind of like, or the fact that it's possible to lift a ship through the Force. And it's like Yoda reminding him that it's in his mind that he gets caught up in.
And I think that that's one of the problems, is that all these successes and failures, a lot of it comes down to, I can't. And everyone's going to say, I can't, for a number of different reasons. And that's not to say that there aren't very real challenges that you have. There very well might be. But who's gonna stop that for you? How many people actually can call up someone to remove barriers for them? And how many successful people have actually done that?
Yeah. Sometimes it's I mean, I can only imagine how many people have gone through such hardship trying to attain, their dream job or their goal, and then being told that they're not enough. Like, they're not talented enough, they're not good enough. But in reality, it's like sometimes there are people that are twisted along the way that try to undermine others, and they just don't go for it anymore because they really believed it. And sometimes it's people just being so harsh, like insane. It's really terrible, but and they just don't make it. They don't go for it. They immediately quit, even though they could have made it. They could have gotten there. That happens. And sometimes
it's hard.
Sometimes they also realize this is not something they really want to go into all the way. That can happen, and they realize they want to go through something in that realm, but a little different. But more importantly, it's like when people say like, "Oh yeah, like you're not talented enough," to me it's like, nah, it's the work. But people saying things like that, it can be dismissive without giving a solution as well, like as an option to understand what they mean.
I mean, people might say you're not talented enough. That just means you have to work harder. And then you have to put in the question, is it worth it to you to put in that work? Maybe the answer isn't to improve your drawing. Maybe the answer is to look for alternative routes. Maybe if you want to be in animation and you can't draw very good, but there's still editing. You can still edit the timing. You can make sure that the frames are properly sorted in the in whether it's 30 frames or 60 frames, or if you're just using 24 frames or running on double shots. You can do that, or there's sound design. there are, just because you can't achieve that singular path doesn't mean that there aren't alternatives.
Yeah. It's always important to I mean, in that case, like, be able to be open to adapt. And sometimes, like, I've seen moments where people are really good, just do great, and people who are just not that good in drawing, but they put the work in, and they succeed and they do great later. You know, everyone's circumstance is different, but it's the choices we make in those moments. Are we going to pursue it to the next level and push ourselves, or are we just going to, like, okay, I need to figure out, change a game plan because it's not working out? But it's important to be persistent to what your goals are. If they have to change them a little, sure, that's fine. But to completely stop is where the failure sets in. Um, but like there are moments, like, for me, I stop to take a rest, and then I go back at it. I don't consider it as like I'm completely stopping, because my mind can't stop thinking. Oh, remember this scene? You got to animate this. I'm like, oh, okay, yes. I'll stop for now so I don't overdo it and burn myself out. So that's the other thing.
Even failure is temporary. Success is temporary too, but so
Yes.
is failure.
Yes.
You might fail, and maybe, and that's why you have people owing their success to failure, because it motivated them to do better. It's when you fail, it's make or break. You're not
Yeah.
being your hand's not being held. You're given an option. Do you want to continue, or do you want to go somewhere else? And I think that that's important when you analyze, when you take a look at yourself. Do I want to keep going? Because
Huh.
you can walk down that hill and it'll be all over.
It reminds me of, like, play video games as a kid. When you die in a game, like, continue, like, and you see the countdown going, and you're like, when you really want to beat that game, that level, you go right back in there. Um, so it's kind of like a fun feeling in a way, but yeah, it's yeah, I guess it's like failure is the price you pay for success. If you think about it.
For most people, for most
Yeah.
people who succeed,
Yeah.
it's it's very rare that people will just win and win and win. And even then, I can't think of a single person who's not gone through struggle in some way or some way.
Yeah. Even I think I tend to think, though, even people who, let's say, win a lot, what tends to happen is the one who's, like, there's situations where the one who's been losing will eventually get a win, and where the winner keeps winning gets a moment of loss. And even when you're winning, it's like there's a struggle because you're dealing with so much competition at times that you may get cocky or and then miss that one step, and that's the difference.
I mean, have you heard of the Battle of Redcliffe?
That, no, no.
So the Battle of Redcliffe was when when a Chinese general, Cao Cao, he was winning victory after victory and after victory. He even had um had the emperor in his control. And he decided he was going to sail down into the south to dis- to finally finish off the last segments of China that were separate from his domain. This was his last bid to unify China. But he was hubristic. He sailed into a trap, and his entire fleet was burned into the river.
I guess that'll do it. But yeah, because that's the thing. There's moments where things get overlooked in the midst of success. That can happen. And yeah, I've seen a few occasions like that happen. Like, not the war, of course, but you know what I mean, in my career so far.
And Cao Cao was one of these people that came from. He wasn't nothing, but he had to work for his success. And he kept winning and winning and winning. And then finally, he lost one of his greatest battles. And it stopped him from unifying China.
Wow. That's crazy. He said the Battle of the Red Cliff?
Red Cliff, yes.
Wow.
I mean, there are movies about it, if not about the entire Romance of the Three Kingdoms period. I think that there literally is a movie titled Red Cliff.
That's nuts. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that'll happen where, yeah, you're winning and you end up hitting you get a loss and it just counts so much. The cost gets heavy, but at the same time, it's just one of those lessons where you can't win it every day, but you also have to like. I mean, it makes me think of like how athletes, like when they go to the Olympics, and they win, but then all of a sudden they lose, like terribly, and they're just devastated. Sometimes they have moments where how can it happen, but then they come back that much more aware, much more skilled, experienced, and they win again.
I mean, isn't that Michael Jordan's story?
Yeah, yeah.
He plays for the Bulls, and then he retires to take up golfing. And then he decided, yeah, I'm not good at golfing. I'm going to go back to basketball.
Yeah. It's what's it? And I can say for me, like I had moments of whenever I had a moment of success, a big one, it felt great, but my mind would go, this is awesome, it's great, enjoy it, but it is for now. Because tomorrow's a new day and you'll have to keep going. And then I had the failures come in and they hit hard and I'm like, man, I can't believe I couldn't keep up or do this right. And I failed. But then I'm reminded that yes, you messed up today. But the time it's gonna go. The sun's gonna rise the next morning. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna pick yourself up from that rubble of failure? Or are you gonna complain, whatever, it doesn't matter. The day restarts so that you have the opportunity to make that ultimate change. You're that much smarter. You're that much more aware.
You can't change what other people are going to do, but you can change what you are going to do.
So I would say, on my part, stay persistent. Stay close to your ideals and goals. Do your very best. Focus on what's important to you, but don't lose the balance of what you need to do with your life.
I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Thomas Edison.
Well, snap. That's actually pretty cool. I like that one. But guys, thank you for listening. We really appreciate your ears. And if you like this episode, please leave a like. If you really like what we're talking about, subscribe. We'd really be happy to have you. We wish you all the best in your endeavors.
Take care and have a good day.